Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Salt Security recently commissioned the State of the CISO 2023 report, which looks at CISO's priorities, pain points, and security gaps to evaluate the impact that the digital-first economy has had on the role of the CISO and the CSO. The research explored the broader business ramifications of digital transformation so organizations can better understand how digital initiatives are impacting risk and how companies can better protect themselves. Michael Nicosia, co-founder and chief operating officer of Salt Security, and Jeff Farinich, chief information security officer of New American Funding, join me to discuss the impact of a digital-first economy on the chief information security officer. Michael and Jeff, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. And Michael, I'd like to start with you. Give us a high-level overview around the methodology of the report and what are some of the key findings?
Yeah, Jill. So first of all, thank you so much for having us. So really, we've been looking at this, new era, which is this digital first, economy, and how digital initiatives really represent the cornerstone of how business innovate. So what happens is that a lot of organizations are rolling out these digital services, and they're completely transforming the ways companies conduct business, as well as how consumers engage with these companies. So if you think about, the DoorDashes of the world, the Ubers, how you do, most people do online banking at this point in time. They shop, retail outlets through the web. So all of these digital services are super fascinating, and we started this a long time ago with, COVID coming in, kind of impacting this even more. We wanted to get a better understanding of how this new digital era really was looked at by CISOs. And one of the biggest findings was that, although they're transformational, but they also provide a ton of security risks associated with some critical data that are associated with these digital services.
Jeff, explain what the role of the CISO is and the biggest challenges that they face in a digital-first economy.
I'd say the role is definitely evolving these days. The CISO is much more than just C-level. We are very active at the board. We're helping to drive transformation initiatives, but also provide guardrails for the company. The day of saying no is no longer acceptable. We have to be the office of yes, but do it securely and timely.
And Jeff, how are newer technologies like the cloud, AI, and general digitization of all industries impacting the role? In other words, what are the biggest challenges CISOs face in a digital-first economy?
Well, cloud's been on for quite a few years now, so most companies already embrace the cloud to some degree, not fully. Myself, I think a challenge is we have a lot more hands in the pot now working with the cloud, expecting to move at the speed of cloud. So like the past years, we had data center guardrails. The cloud, there's a lot more options, configurations, and just a lot more controls needed to secure it. AI's newer buzz term, especially with ChatGPT. The challenge is trying to understand how the business will use this and how to do it securely. And lastly, any transformation is so tightly requires a dependency on APIs.
Michael, what are the top security control gaps?
Yeah, I think that the first two is really, as we talked about, these digital services getting adopted so quickly and having not only the appetite, but being able to adopt these services, or as what Jeff mentioned, APIs adoption as well. So let me just give you some context. When we talk about APIs, these are the glue that connect data flow to and from all these digital services. So they're the connectors, and there's a lot of critical data associated within these APIs. So we found that the adoption of AI, cloud, all of these digital services, and remember, just another context is if you think about some of these services, they could be in the forms of web apps or mobile apps or microservices, and adopting them and understanding the critical components and what's critical information are being stored in these is super, super important to these CISOs. And that's really kind of what we found, that there's a massive gap, not only identifying them, but really understanding what critical information are housed into these APIs that could be exposed to CISOs in the world outside.
So then, Jeff, how are CISOs addressing those security gaps?
The challenge really is understanding what all the controls are, what the gaps are, tying it to regulations. Regulations today are front and center. You have FTC Safeguards Act, you have CCPA in California, you have NYDFS for New York, as well as many other states. So, I myself tie all my risk items, my budget items, all to the controls. Then I go back to the business and say, listen, here's where the gaps are. Here's what we have to meet, and just educate them on just the importance. And today it's all about protecting the data. There's data everywhere, on-premise, cloud, SaaS, and really it's the decentralization of data is the biggest challenge. So making sure the controls to protect the organization and consumers.
Michael, how come CSOs are opened up to more litigation and liability risk these days?
Well, I think that's interesting, and I'd love to get Jeff's take on that. I mean, I think as a CISO, you're taking on tons of responsibility and liability within the organization. And I think because of, some of the new ways that bad actors are coming into the organizations, it's really hard from a CISO perspective to make sure that you understand your entire posture management, to really understand all your risks. And I think, when organizations have breaches or some vulnerabilities that come, I mean, a lot of individuals or a lot of organizations point to one individual who is normally the CISO that has to take those controls, because that individual is obviously responsible for the security and the well-being of the organization, both digitally and in some cases, physically.
Mm-hmm. So, Jeff, would you say boards of directors are knowledgeable about cyber risks and mitigation? And how can CISOs more effectively communicate their needs and security strategy?
Well, I'll say they're definitely getting more engaged. I mean, the rate of breaches, incidents this year alone has far exceeded any other prior year. So look at cases recently with Uber and John Sullivan, and just recently with SolarWinds, first time the SEC issued a Wells notice. So we're kind of in an uncharted territory for CISOs, and as far as risk and liability goes, but it's really the job of the CISO to educate the business, the board, the entire user community on just how critical security is this day.
And Michael, how can SALT security help CISOs overcome these challenges?
Yeah, these are massive challenges, and why we started SALT Security in 2018. I mean, the reality is, the first thing that you need is visibility into these digital services as well as these APIs. So we have, a platform that basically allows you to discover these, APIs, and moreover, really the critical components, the critical data associated with these APIs. And then obviously we're able to detect and prevent these API attacks. And we're the only solution that leverages big data, AI, and ML. And obviously we have a patent with our technology. And one of the reasons why in this growing digital era, we decided that, we wanted to help CISOs really secure these digital services along with these APIs.
All right, Michael and Jeff, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.